Hey everyone, welcome back to AGS Stories. Today's post comes from the subreddit Relationship Advice and is shared by the user Ivan227. In this story, the author, a 21-year-old woman named Sarah, shares her experience with her 22-year-old boyfriend Luke, who has been learning American Sign Language (ASL) to communicate with her 19-year-old deaf brother, Ben. However, Sarah's friends, including her close friend Jake, find it a little unsettling and see it as a red flag. Let's dive into the story to understand why they feel this way and how things unfold from here. The best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them. Ernest Hemingway. I'm 22 years old and I've been dating a guy named Luke, who's 23, for about 6 months now. We met last fall in a college art class, and it didn't take long for me to realize how amazing he was. He's kind, funny, super respectful, and we share a lot of the same interests. I'd never dated anyone before, so I wasn't sure what to expect, but Luke quickly became my first real boyfriend. Everything felt so natural, and I was thrilled to be with someone who made me feel comfortable and understood. Last month, when I visited home for my brother's birthday, Luke came with me to meet my family. My brother, Ben, is 18 and has been deaf since birth. Growing up with Ben has shaped a lot of my life. My family communicates with him through American Sign Language, ASL, but sometimes we also use lip reading and texting. Ben's condition never bothered me, it was just how we connected as a family. At first, I wasn't sure how Luke would handle it, since it was his first time around someone who was deaf. But he was amazing. Honestly, he was better than I had hoped. When we sat down for dinner, he was cracking jokes, and Ben, even though he can read lips, was laughing too. Luke even tried to sign a few things for Ben, and Ben's face lit up when he saw it. He was so excited that someone was trying to bridge the communication gap, even if it was just with basic signs. After dinner, the three of us played video games. Ben loves gaming. It was hilarious because even though Ben couldn't trash talk out loud, he was still finding creative ways to express his frustration with Luke's gameplay. I was the translator for most of the game, but the fun part was watching Luke join in, trying to understand Ben's hand gestures and signs. They actually got along really well, even after that initial awkwardness. 2 weeks ago, Luke came with me again for my mom's birthday. This time, he surprised everyone, including me, by communicating with Ben through ASL. He'd been studying on his own for weeks. He had picked up some basic signs, and it was evident that he really cared. It wasn't perfect. His signing was slow, and I still had to help out with translation, but Ben was so happy. I'd never seen him so excited to chat with someone without needing an interpreter. Luke had been watching ASL tutorials on YouTube, and he even subscribed to a Skillshare class to improve his skills. He was dedicated, and it made me feel so appreciated. That day, the two of them had another gaming session, and Ben and Luke could actually communicate directly. Sure, it was still slow, but there was something powerful about seeing Ben not just rely on me, but connect with someone else on his own terms. I was really proud of Luke, and told my closest friends about how far he'd come. But when I mentioned it to my high school friend group, things quickly turned sour. Most of them, especially my best friend Jake, thought Luke's behavior was a red flag. They claimed it seemed creepy that Luke was so involved with my family after only 5 months of dating. Jake even said that Luke might be doing it just to get closer to me, almost like it was some kind of manipulation. They said it was a sign of obsession. I was taken aback. I've never had experience with relationships before, and my friend's words made me question myself. I trusted Luke completely. He had never done anything to make me feel uncomfortable, and he'd always been respectful. But the more I thought about what they said, the more I wondered if I was missing something. Was Luke's effort to communicate with Ben a sign of genuine care, or was he just trying to get closer to me? I tried to ignore my friend's concerns. After all, it wasn't like we were rushing into anything serious, right? We hadn't even been intimate yet, because I told him I wasn't ready. He didn't push, and I appreciated that, but the doubts kept creeping in. Maybe I was just naive. Maybe my friends knew something I didn't. Should I be worried? Could this be a form of emotional manipulation? I had no idea how to read the situation. And to make things more complicated, my friend group began to push me to break up with Luke. They kept saying that his interest in Ben wasn't healthy, that it was a form of trying to win me over by getting involved with my family. I didn't know what to believe. It felt like I was caught between two worlds. My friends who thought Luke was too good to be true, and the guy who had been nothing but supportive and caring since we started dating. After some serious back and forth, I finally decided to talk to my parents about it. They had always been my sounding board, and they were the ones who knew me best. They reassured me that Luke's efforts were genuine. They had seen him interact with Ben and had witnessed firsthand how Luke was trying to understand and integrate into our family. My mom even said, "He's trying to build a relationship with Ben. That takes patience and heart." But the situation didn't feel any less complicated. My friends were still pushing me to break up with him, claiming that his attachment was unnatural. I didn't know how to proceed. Was it possible that I was missing something in my relationship, or was I just too caught up in the excitement of being with someone who seemed to be everything I wanted? It was the hardest decision I've ever had to make. I still care for Luke, but I'm torn between listening to the people I've known for years and trusting my own instincts. I don't want to lose him, but I also don't want to ignore red flags that might be there. As I continue to figure out where my relationship with Luke is heading, I wonder, am I making the right choice by standing by him, or am I falling into a trap of thinking he's someone he's not? Well, even though it's nice that your friends are trying to look out for you, I don't think their hearts are in the right place. Particularly Jake, who claims that Luke's efforts to learn ASL are a form of emotional manipulation or a red flag. Honestly, Jake sounds like the real red flag here. Luke clearly cares for you, and more importantly, he's shown a genuine interest in your family, especially your brother Ben. He's going above and beyond, not just by playing games with Ben online, but by taking the time to learn how to communicate with him through ASL. That shows real dedication and kindness, something that's hard to come by. If there's anyone who should be reevaluated, it's your friends. I'm starting to think that there might be some ulterior motives at play here, and they're not nice. Now, let's see what others think about this situation. Crystal Queen 3000 says, "Your friends are thieves of joy. A guy that likes you is going out of his way to learn to communicate with your brother? That's adorable. Don't let your friends crap on it." It's clear that Crystal Queen 3000 sees Luke's actions as truly thoughtful and heartwarming, showing that he's genuinely interested in your brother's well-being. Square Minimum 6042 agrees, commenting, "I think your closest friend, Jake, likes you. Likes you. Likes you. Your boyfriend sounds wonderful. Don't listen to their nonsense. I'm happy for you and your brother that Luke is so kind. Don't let your friend's jealousy make you doubt yourself or Luke." Square Minimum 6042 believes that Jake's reaction might stem from jealousy or an unspoken attachment to you. Instead of being supportive, Jake's negative view of Luke seems to reflect his own personal feelings. Janet in Spain goes a step further, saying, "Damn, you need better friends. Your friends are the ones who are creepy, reading so much dark intent into what is actually a very kind, thoughtful, and respectful gesture on your boyfriend's part." How do you proceed? Dump the loser friends. Janet in Spain is adamant that your friends are misjudging Luke and reading too much into his good intentions. The kindness Luke shows towards Ben shouldn't be seen through a negative lens. After reading all these responses, Sarah says, "I am now reevaluating my relationship with my friends. This wasn't the first time they gave negative feedback about a guy I liked." Pila said, "Why are your friends so cynical? Who hurt them? This is a really sweet gesture. He's literally learning another language so he can communicate with your brother. That's really kind." Sarah is starting to see that her friends may be projecting their own issues onto her relationship with Luke, and it's making her question their true intentions. She goes on, edit to add, "How do your friends talk or view your brother? I'm kind of getting the sense that they might be seeing him as not his own person just because he has a disability. That's why they're so dead set on this idea that Luke is only learning ASL to get laid." Sarah is starting to realize that her friends might not fully appreciate or respect Ben for who he is, and their dismissive attitude toward his disability is influencing their view of Luke's efforts. They might be projecting their own biases onto the situation, which is troubling. Sarah responds, "They don't really interact with my brother much. Whenever they see him, it's mostly just a smile and a polite wave, and then we do our own thing." This further shows how disconnected her friends are from her family, particularly Ben. If they aren't willing to engage with Ben beyond surface-level politeness, it's harder for them to understand why Luke's effort to connect with him is so meaningful. Edit. After reading through all your insightful comments, I really want to thank everyone for your support. Yes, Luke is a wonderful guy, and he has done nothing to make me question his sincerity. The only doubt I've been feeling has come from my friends. They've had their own experiences with relationships, and I think their worries began to cloud my judgment. The pressure they put on me really made me second-guess everything. But after hearing your perspectives, I realize how much I've been influenced by their opinions. I truly appreciate all your insights, and it's become clear that I need to do some serious reflection about my relationships, not only with Luke, but also with my friends. Your words have opened my eyes, and I now see the situation more clearly. Thanks again for all your kindness and advice. It's helped me more than you can imagine. So, let's dive right into the update. First off, I just want to express my gratitude to everyone who took the time to give their insights on my original post. I'm so new to relationships, and reading advice from people outside of my inner circle was incredibly eye-opening. I was able to step back and see things with a clearer perspective. A lot of Redditors suggested that my high school friends are manipulative, untrustworthy, and ableist, particularly when they never bothered to learn ASL despite knowing me for so long. While I do take accountability for some things, it's not entirely their fault. For context, my family moved to the area when I was in my senior year of high school because of my dad's job. I joined a friend group that was already tight-knit, 2 guys and 2 girls. They took me in after we were grouped together for a school project, and we've been friends for about 4 years now. They weren't saints, but they helped me survive my senior year, offering the support I needed during a tough time. At the time, my brother Ben was having an especially hard time adjusting because of his disability. My friends didn't really see him much because he would lock himself in his room when they came over, or he would stay in a different area with his tutor. Ben is shy, and he doesn't feel comfortable around people who don't understand him. I was never ashamed of him, but we kept our interactions somewhat distant. By the time Ben got more comfortable in the area and found his own social circle, my friends and I had already graduated and didn't hang out as regularly anymore. They're friendly with Ben now, but the truth is, they never interacted with him enough to understand the significance of me learning ASL to communicate with him. They never saw it as a priority to get involved in his life in any meaningful way. So when the time came for me to introduce my boyfriend, John, to my friends, I had no idea how it would play out. It was during our year-end party last week that I decided to bring John along. This wasn't out of the blue. I'd mentioned him to the group before, and they knew about him. Mike, my closest guy friend, had met him a few times, but the rest of my friends hadn't. I wanted them to form their own opinions about John. At first, things were awkward. They were cold toward him, making snarky comments here and there. Eventually, though, they warmed up to him. To my surprise, they seemed to genuinely like him, and we all ended up having a good time together. Still, I noticed there was a lingering tension between Mike and John. Mike was throwing more mean-spirited jokes than usual, and he started isolating himself from the group. It was clear something was off. The next day, I had lunch with Sophie, my closest girlfriend, to talk things through. I could sense that Sophie, along with the rest of the group, felt something was wrong. There were hints of discomfort that couldn't be ignored. Many of the Redditors speculated that Mike might have a crush on me and was jealous of my relationship with John. Turns out, they were right. Mike has had a thing for me since high school, but it's a lot more complicated than that. Mike is known for being a notorious ladies' man. Throughout high school and college, he had a new girlfriend or hookup almost every month. I knew this because he would brag about it every time we hung out. But what I didn't know was the extent of the lies he'd been spreading about me. Sophie told me that Mike had been telling people that we had a pact, that if we were still single by the time we were 30, we'd get married. He also claimed that we'd hooked up after graduation and that he took my virginity. The worst part? He said we had secretly been hooking up throughout college, even though we went to different universities 30 minutes apart. Mike even told our friends that I was in love with him. He tried to convince them that John was manipulative and was trying to take advantage of my innocence and naivety. He painted John as someone who was trying to worm his way into my family to steal me away from my friends. According to Mike, I had been brainwashed by John, and that's why I was so attached to him. None of it was true, and I was shocked when I found out what he had been saying behind my back. Sophie and I gathered the rest of the group, excluding Mike, for a FaceTime call. Everyone shared different versions of the stories Mike had been telling them, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The lies were so absurd. We were all collectively shocked, and they all apologized for their behavior toward John and me. It was clear to me now that Mike had been manipulating them with false information. We all agreed that Mike had to go. Sophie suggested we have an intervention, but I just didn't want to deal with him anymore. I told her I wanted to distance myself from Mike completely. The rest of the group agreed, and we made the decision to cut him off. Sophie later spoke to Mike, and he became defensive, aggressive even. He didn't physically lash out, but he attacked their characters, calling them names and making awful statements about everyone. It was clear that cutting him out was the right choice. Now, after a week of being free from Mike's toxicity, I feel like I can finally breathe. I've reflected a lot on everything that happened, and I talked to my parents for advice. They've been together for over 25 years, and they know what a healthy relationship looks like. They said they saw how John treated me and Ben, and they believe he has pure intentions. It also helps that John and I were friends for months before we started dating, so I had a chance to see his true character. There was no pressure or manipulation. It was always about building a strong foundation. I had a long conversation with John about everything that had happened. I fully expected him to be mad at me for doubting his intentions, but instead, he was understanding. He said it made sense that I would trust my friends and expect them to have my best interests at heart. He then asked me if there was ever a moment when I felt uncomfortable or uneasy around him. I told him categorically that there was never any point in our relationship where I felt that way. He is my safe space. John reassured me again that his intentions were genuine, and he even told me that he saw a future with me. Hearing that meant the world to me. John and Ben's friendship is still going strong. They've even had a few D&D sessions together. And Ben's been asking John for fitness tips since they have similar body types. I was touched by the bond they've built. John's friends also know ASL and have included it in their D&D campaign. It's heartwarming to see how much effort John has put into making Ben feel included. A few weeks ago, I met John's family for the first time. It was a blast. They had their annual family gathering, and they're all so welcoming. I was a little nervous, but they treated me like one of their own. It's clear where John gets his warmth and good values from. His mom is a theater performer, and his dad is a music producer, so it's no surprise they have a talent showcase tradition. They gave me a pass this time, but I'm already thinking about what I'll perform next year. Now, after everything that's happened, I'm confident in my relationship with John. I know who my true friends are, and I've learned a lot about trusting my instincts. Thank you all so much for your support and insights. Happy New Year to everyone, and here's to a bright future ahead. Update on the situation. So, after everything I've been through, I feel like I can finally breathe a bit easier. A huge thank you to everyone who shared their thoughts and advice on my previous post. I was feeling overwhelmed and confused, and reading through your responses really opened my eyes. I've been in a whirlwind of emotions and doubt, especially when it came to trusting my friends. But now, I realize that trusting my instincts and distancing myself from toxic people was the right move. I want to start by addressing the most important takeaway from this journey. Luke is truly an amazing person. I knew it from the beginning, but it's hard not to get lost in other people's opinions, especially when you've been close to them for so long. Many of you pointed out how admirable it was that Luke took the time to learn ASL for Ben, and how that reflects his genuine care and dedication. I was starting to second-guess everything due to the pressure from my friends, but you all helped me see that Luke was never the problem. It was the people around me who didn't understand him. Some Redditors were pretty blunt in their feedback, calling out my high school friends for being ableist and manipulative. That stung a bit, but I can't deny that it was the truth. They'd never bothered to learn ASL, even though they knew Ben was a part of my life. I had always kept Ben and my friends separate, not because I was ashamed of him, but because they never took the initiative to engage with him. Looking back, it's clear that my friends didn't really care to get to know Ben for who he was, and that's something I wish I'd noticed sooner. To give some context, my family moved to this area when I was a senior in high school. My dad's job required us to relocate, and that's when I joined this friend group. The group was already pretty tight, and they accepted me without hesitation. Over the years, we had a lot of good times together, but there was always this underlying distance when it came to Ben. During high school, he was still trying to adjust to everything, and because of his disability, he wasn't always around when my friends came over. He was shy and preferred to stay in his room or with his tutor. I was never ashamed of him, but it was just easier for everyone to avoid the discomfort of engaging with someone they didn't understand. Fast forward to the present, and my friends and I had grown apart after graduation. We didn't hang out much anymore, but I still thought of them as my close friends. When Luke and I became serious, I was excited to introduce him to my old friends at our year-end party. I thought they'd like him because he was kind, caring, and respectful. But from the moment Luke walked in, it felt like things were off. There was an awkward tension, and my friends were cold to him at first. As the night went on, they warmed up, but it was clear that something was bothering them. The biggest shock came from Mike, my longtime friend. From the beginning, I noticed that he wasn't as friendly with Luke as the others were. Mike's usual jokes felt meaner than usual, and he kept isolating himself from the group. At first, I brushed it off as nothing, but then I had lunch with Sophie, and she pointed out something I hadn't realized. Mike was jealous of Luke. I was stunned. Mike had always been a ladies' man, hopping from one hookup to the next, and I never thought he'd have feelings for me. But it turns out that he'd been harboring a secret crush on me since high school. The real kicker was what I found out next. Mike had been telling the group that he and I had a pact, that if we were both still single by the time we turned 30, we'd get married. He also claimed that we'd hooked up after graduation and that he was the one who took my virginity. As if that wasn't messed up enough, Mike had spun a whole story about how we'd been secretly hooking up throughout college, even though we went to different schools and hardly ever saw each other. The lies Mike told about me were beyond anything I could have imagined. Sophie filled me in on everything Mike had been saying to our friends. Apparently, Mike had been telling everyone that I was in love with him and that Luke was somehow manipulating me into distancing myself from my friends. He painted Luke as the villain in the story, trying to drive a wedge between me and my old friends. It was all a twisted fabrication, and hearing it made my blood boil. None of it was true. There was no pact, no secret relationship. Mike had created this fantasy in his mind and had been convincing everyone else that it was real. I couldn't just let it go, so I decided to confront the situation head-on. Sophie and I arranged a FaceTime call with the rest of our friend group, minus Mike. Everyone shared what they had heard from Mike, and I was absolutely floored by the lies. We were all in shock, and they were horrified by what Mike had been telling them. They apologized to me and to Luke for the way they had treated him. It was clear that Mike had manipulated them into believing this false narrative. In the end, we all agreed that Mike had to go. Sophie suggested we hold an intervention, but I just couldn't deal with him anymore. I didn't want any part of his toxicity in my life. The rest of the group supported me, and we cut him off. Sophie later spoke to Mike, and when she did, he became incredibly defensive, attacking everyone's character. His reaction only confirmed what I already knew. He wasn't someone I could trust. Now that I've removed the negative influences from my life, I feel a weight lifted off my shoulders. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on everything, and after talking to my parents, I realized that they were right. They've been together for years, and they know what a healthy relationship looks like. They saw that Luke is a good person with pure intentions. We were friends before we started dating, so I already knew his character. There was no manipulation, no hidden agendas, just a genuine connection. I also talked to Luke about everything that had happened. I felt terrible for doubting him, but when I expressed my concerns, he was nothing but understanding. He reassured me that he understood why I'd trusted my friends and expected them to have my best interests at heart. Luke is my safe space, and hearing that he saw a future with me made me feel more secure than ever. Things are going really well between Luke and me now. Ben and Luke's friendship is stronger than ever, and it's amazing to see how much they've bonded. Ben even participated in one of Luke's D&D sessions, and Luke's friends have learned ASL to include Ben in their games. It's heartwarming to see how much effort Luke puts into including Ben in his life. So, thank you to everyone who helped me see the truth. I've learned so much about trust, friendship, and what it means to stand by someone you love. I'm looking forward to the future with Luke and feeling more confident than ever.